Picture this, a sprawling country, untouched landscapes, and the open road beckoning. Now imagine tackling it all with just a measly $10 bill in your pocket. Sounds insane, right? That's the ridiculous challenge we're diving into, a hilarious, hunger-inducing, and hopefully humbling adventure across a nation, armed with nothing but pocket change and a prayer. Could it be done? Is it utter madness or a stroke of genius? Fasten your seatbelts, folks, because we're about to find out if frugality can be funny, and if this journey ends in triumph or a frantic call to mom for bus fare. This isn't your average travel vlog with fancy hotels and gourmet meals. Oh no, this is about embracing the art of thrift, the thrill of the unknown, and let's be honest, the sheer absurdity of it all. Get ready for questionable food choices, creative sleeping arrangements, and enough awkward encounters to make you cringe, laugh, and maybe even shed a tear, of laughter, hopefully. We're about to test the limits of resourcefulness, patience, and maybe even the universe's sense of humor. Meet your guide through this financial fiasco, a fearless soul with a knack for stretching a dollar further than a yoga instructor on payday. Armed with an iron stomach, a questionable moral compass when it comes to free snacks, and a talent for finding humor in the most unexpected places, our protagonist is ready to take on the world, one penny-pinching step at a time. Their mission? To conquer not just miles, but the misconceptions about what's possible on a shoestring budget. Forget fancy travel apps and all-inclusive packages. This journey is all about embracing the unexpected. We're talking hitchhiking with strangers who may or may not have a collection of rubber chickens in their trunk, negotiating the price of street food with the charisma of a used car salesman, and discovering the luxurious accommodations offered by public parks after dark. Spoiler alert, they're not that luxurious. Get ready for a crash course in budget travel, where every cent counts, every meal is a gamble, and every interaction is a chance for something to go hilariously wrong. First things first, world domination on $10 is, sadly, not feasible. Even conquering a small town's vending machine seemed ambitious. So we had to get strategic. Think smaller. Think adorable. We're talking micronations, folks. We found the tiniest country our pride and the Geneva Convention would allow. A landmass so petite you could walk across it in a day. Almost. If you're into that whole physical exertion thing. This wasn't just about size though, this was about logistics. Smaller country meant fewer tolls, less distance between free Wi-Fi hotspots, crucial for when you need to Google edible plants sidewalk, and a higher chance of finding someone who'd understand your broken attempts at their language, plus less ground to cover meant more time for shenanigans. Because let's be real, this wasn't just about proving a point, it was about creating a story so ridiculous, it'd make your grandma say, "Get that child a sponsorship deal," or a therapist. With a destination locked and loaded, the next hurdle was, well, actually getting there. Flights were out of the question, trains, laughably expensive. We were left with the most classic, most romanticized, most likely to involve questionable personal hygiene option hitchhiking, but this wasn't just about sticking our thumb out and hoping for the best. Oh no, this was about weaponizing charm, wit, and maybe a slightly exaggerated sob story to guilt-trip kind strangers into chauffeuring us around. We're talking crafting the perfect sob story, the kind that would make a statue pull over and offer a sympathetic hot dog. We practiced our lost puppy dog eyes in the mirror. We even considered carrying around a bag of kittens for added emotional leverage. We decided against it, eventually. Because when you're working with a budget this tight, your acting skills are your most valuable asset. Well, that, and a decent deodorant. Let's be real, fine dining wasn't on the menu. We were talking about culinary creativity at its finest, or at least its most desperate. Think gas station ramen hacks, foraging for berries that may or may not have been part of a science experiment, and mastering the art of befriending locals who have a soft spot for stray humans and a surplus of questionable casserole. We're talking dumpster diving, with class of course, mastering the art of the free sample hustle, and becoming intimately familiar with the concept of culinary fusion, as in, whatever we could find fused together in the back of the fridge. Survival? Absolutely. Delicious? Debatable. But hey, at least it would be an adventure for our taste buds, and possibly our digestive systems. Five-star hotels? Not quite our style, or our budget. We're talking about embracing the great outdoors, or at least, the semi-great urban outdoors. Think park benches, bus stops, and maybe, just maybe, if we were lucky, a friendly farmer willing to trade a night in their barn for some light mucking duties. We're talking mastering the art of stealth camping, becoming one with nature, and by nature we mean park squirrels, and perfecting the "I totally meant to sleep here" pose for any curious passersby. It's all about embracing the minimalist lifestyle. No fancy pillows, no room service, just the sweet, sweet lullaby of city traffic and the occasional serenade from a nearby pigeon. Who needs luxury when you have the twinkling lights of a convenience store sign, right?
All right, folks, time to put our meticulously crafted hitchhiking persona to the test. Picture this, me, standing by the side of the road, backpack practically overflowing with thrift store charm, holding a sign that could make even the most heartless commuter crack a smile. The goal? To convince a complete stranger that giving me a ride wasn't just a good deed, it was destiny calling. Easier said than done, right? Let me tell you, there's an art to hitchhiking. It's a delicate dance between desperation and dignity. Optimism and please don't leave me stranded in this one-horse town. You've got to project an air of trustworthiness, even if your last meal was a bag of questionable gas station jerky. You've got to make eye contact, smile, and for the love of all that is holy, avoid looking like you're about to star in a low-budget horror film. It's a numbers game, they say. And our number at that moment was looking pretty darn unlucky. Just when my hope was dwindling faster than my supply of instant coffee, a rusty pickup truck screeched to a halt in front of me. Out stepped, well, let's just say she wasn't exactly who I was expecting.
Meet Granny Ethel, a woman who looked like she'd lived more lives than a cat and had the stories, and the questionable driving skills, to prove it. Her truck smelled faintly of mothballs and something that might have been a prize-winning pumpkin pie back in its glory days. And the music blasting from her speakers? Let's just say it was a unique blend of polka and heavy metal that could only be appreciated with an open mind, and maybe a few earplugs.
Well, get in, Sonny. You look like you could use a good dose of adventure, and maybe a decent meal.
And just like that, my luck had changed. Or had it. I mean, free ride, sure. But heavy metal polka? That's a whole other journey for the soul. As we rumbled down the road, Ethel regaling me with tales of her younger days. Apparently she once won a pie-eating contest while riding a unicycle, or maybe it was a tractor. I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. Sure, my eardrums were being held hostage by the musical equivalent of a monster truck rally, but hey, at least I was moving. And that, my friends, is half the battle when you're trying to cross a country on a shoestring budget.
But as the miles ticked by and Jay's stomach started to growl louder than Ethel's sound system, he realized that transportation was only part of the challenge. Jay had successfully outsmarted the system, or at least hitched a ride with someone who didn't seem to mind his questionable hygiene. But now he had a new problem to tackle: how to fuel this adventure without fueling his already impressive deficit. Because let's be real, surviving on charm and Ethel's questionable roadside snacks was not a sustainable long-term strategy.
Hours on the road had passed, fueled by Ethel's stories and a steady diet of gas station snacks that looked like they'd been engineered in a lab, and not the good kind of lab. Ethel, bless her soul, had a constitution of steel and thought nothing of washing down her questionable beef jerky with a gallon of what she called road soda. Me? My stomach was starting to stage a revolt. I needed real food, or at least something that wouldn't require a hazmat suit to digest.
They pulled into a dusty truck stop, the kind of place with more charm than hygiene standards. The aroma of fried everything hung heavy in the air, a cruel joke considering Jay's financial situation. He dug through his pockets, hoping to find a stray dollar bill that had somehow escaped his previous culinary escapades. No such luck. Jay was down to his last $1.50, the weight of his entire culinary future resting on those 3 measly coins.
The convenience store attached to the truck stop was a symphony of fluorescent lighting and the faint scent of despair. I wandered the aisles, my $1.50 clutched in my hand like a winning lottery ticket. Instant ramen? Tempting, but would it fill the void in my soul and stomach? Questionable meat stick that could double as a weapon? Intriguing, but my digestive system was already sending out distress signals. I stood frozen in the aisle, paralyzed by indecision. Could I stretch my $1.50 into a culinary masterpiece? Or was this the moment I surrendered to a life of flavorless protein bars and the occasional packet of ketchup as a condiment? Then I saw it. A beacon of hope in the land of processed food. A single-serving microwavable cup of macaroni and cheese. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't healthy. but it was $1.49, and it promised a level of cheesy goodness that my soul desperately craved. Decision made. With my macaroni and cheese secured, victory, I realized I had a new problem: thirst. My budget, now reduced to a measly penny, didn't allow for such luxuries as bottled beverages. I needed a free hydration solution, and fast. Ethel, ever the resourceful road warrior, pointed me towards the restrooms, whispering something about a perfectly good sink. I politely declined, my standards not yet having been completely eroded by my budget constraints. Then, I remembered a fundamental truth of budget travel. Where there are public restrooms, there are often public water fountains. And wouldn't you know it, tucked away in a corner, practically camouflaged by a family of tourists arguing over a map, was my salvation. A free water fountain, glistening like an oasis in the desert of my thirst. I may have been down to my last penny, but I was hydrated, I was optimistic, and I was ready to face whatever culinary challenges the open road threw my way. Well, almost ready. Back on the road, my stomach now temporarily satisfied by the processed goodness of microwave macaroni and cheese, I reflected on the valuable lesson I had learned. When you're operating on a shoestring budget, culinary creativity isn't just a choice, it's a survival skill. Forget fancy restaurants and gourmet ingredients. This was about embracing the art of improvisation, of turning whatever you could find into something resembling a meal. I started to see the world through the lens of a culinary scavenger hunt. That discarded apple core? A potential dessert topping? Those wilted dandelion greens by the side of the road? A gourmet salad in the making, after a thorough washing, of course. Okay, maybe gourmet was pushing it, but desperate times call for flexible definitions. I was determined to prove that you could eat well, or at least eat something, on a budget. And if that meant embracing my inner foodie Frankenstein, so be it. Ethel dropped me off at the edge of a sleepy town, her parting words a strange mix of life advice, never trust a man who wears socks with sandals, and heavy metal polka recommendations. I was back to being a lone wolf, navigating the wilds of budget travel with nothing but my wits, my trusty 1 cent, thanks macaroni and cheese, and a growing suspicion that I might be allergic to whatever air freshener they used in Ethel's truck. Hitchhiking had been surprisingly successful so far, but my gut, perhaps still recovering from the gas station jerky, told me it was time to diversify my transportation portfolio. As I wandered through the town square, a flash of bright pink caught my eye. Parked outside a bakery, looking as out of place as a penguin at a pool party, was a scooter. Not just any scooter, mind you, but one of those electric ones, the kind that screamed eco-friendly transportation and mildly illegal joyriding. An idea began to form in my mind. An idea so crazy, so audacious, so potentially morally questionable that even Ethel might have raised an eyebrow. This was it. This was my chance to become a budget travel renegade. This was the great scooter caper. Scooter. Now, before you judge my impending lapse in judgment, let me just say that borrowing in the world of budget travel exists in a bit of a gray area. It's not quite stealing, but it's not exactly ethical either. It's more like a temporary loan from the universe with the promise that you'll return the item, or at least not get caught with it. And this scooter, my friends, was about to become my temporary chariot to freedom. I casually strolled past the bakery, pretending to admire the pastries in the window. Oh, how I longed for a croissant, while surreptitiously checking for any signs of the scooter's owner. The coast was clear. With a mix of guilt and adrenaline coursing through my veins, I hopped onto the scooter, muttered a silent apology to the universe and the bakery owner, and took off. The wind whipped through my hair as I zoomed down the road, the electric hum of the scooter a symphony to my ears. Of course, my scooter-powered joyride couldn't last forever. The battery, much like my hopes and dreams, slowly began to drain. I approached a group of teenagers at a bus stop, hoping they wouldn't judge my questionable mode of transportation, or my questionable hygiene. To my surprise, they not only offered to let me charge my scooter, but they also threw in a bag of chips and a can of soda for good measure. As the sun began its slow descent, I stumbled upon a playground with a giant twisty slide. I gathered up some discarded cardboard boxes, fashioned myself a makeshift shelter under the slide, and christened my new abode Hotel J. Liffick. Sure, the views weren't exactly 5-star, but it was free, it was dry, and it beat sleeping on a park bench. Well, most nights anyway. The sun was high, my stomach was grumbling, and my pockets contained exactly $0.01. Standing between me and my next meal was a bustling open-air market, a symphony of sights, smells, and the sound of vendors hawking their wares. This was a place where bartering was king, and where having the audacity to ask, "Do you take pennies?" could get you laughed out of the market. I approached the first stall, my heart pounding with a mix of hunger and the fear of rejection. I dug through my backpack and found my bartering Golda mix CD I'd made back in high school, labeled Jay's Ultimate Road Trip Mix. This wasn't just any mix CD, it was a carefully curated collection of questionable musical choices. I was convinced it held at least some bartering power.
What is this?
This isn't just a CD, it's a cultural experience, a time capsule of teenage angst and questionable musical choices.
You're lucky I have a soft spot for starving artists with terrible taste in music.
Remember Hotel J Liffick, my luxurious cardboard box suite under the playground slide? Yeah, about that.
Nightfall had descended, bringing with it a symphony of rustling leaves, distant sirens, and the unsettling feeling that I was sharing my makeshift home with something alive.
It started subtly, a twig snapping, a muffled squeak, the distinct sensation of something small and furry brushing past my ankle. My attempts at urban camping had inadvertently turned into an all-you-can-eat buffet for the local raccoon population. I tried to ignore the rustling, the squeaking, the feeling of tiny claws digging into my backpack in search of snacks. But as the minutes ticked by and the noises grew bolder, I realized I had two choices: face my fears or find a new place to sleep. Grabbing my meager belongings and my trusty flashlight, I emerged from my cardboard palace, blinking in the dim glow of the streetlights. I wandered through the deserted streets, each shadow seeming to whisper, "You're going to get eaten by a raccoon, or worse, you're going to have to call your mom for bus fare." My dreams of budget travel grandeur were fading faster than my supply of clean socks. I needed something more secure, something luxurious. Okay, maybe not luxurious, but at least something that didn't involve sharing my sleeping space with rodents. Just when I was about to give up and accept my fate as a raccoon chew toy, I spotted it. A porch light, shining brightly like a beacon of civilization. I took a deep breath, straightened my shirt, and rang the doorbell. As the sound echoed through the night, I couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone out there wouldn't mind a slightly disheveled budget traveler crashing on their couch for a few hours. The sunrise was a symphony of pastel colors, mocking my sleep-deprived state with its cheerful disposition. I hadn't managed to secure a couch to crash on. My attempt at porch-light diplomacy had been met with a gruff voice through the intercom and a veiled threat about calling the authorities. I was back on the streets, my stomach rumbling, my wallet practically empty, and my spirit starting to resemble a deflated party balloon. And that's when I saw it. A sign, practically glowing with the promise of salvation: karaoke taxi. Sing for a free ride. Now, I'm not what you'd call a naturally gifted vocalist. In fact, my singing voice has been compared to a wounded yak attempting to yodel. I hopped into the back of the taxi, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and the fear of shattering every window within a 5-mile radius. The driver, a kindly old man who smelled faintly of cigarettes and unfulfilled dreams, handed me a microphone with a knowing smile. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and belted out the first song that popped into my head, Bohemian Rhapsody. The next few minutes were a blur of questionable notes, dramatic hand gestures, and the faint suspicion that I was causing the taxi driver some degree of emotional distress. But you know what? It felt good. Cathartic, even. As I hit the final glorious, or perhaps gloriously off-key note, the taxi came to a stop. We were at the edge of town, the open road stretching out before me like a metaphor for my uncertain future.
Kid, you got guts and a serious lack of rhythm, but guts nonetheless.
With a renewed sense of purpose and a slightly heavier wallet, I set off on the final leg of my journey. The border, my elusive goal, was tantalizingly close. I could practically taste victory. Or maybe that was just the taste of the questionable gas station hot dog I'd managed to snag with my newfound wealth. I was down to my last few dollars, my clothes were held together by willpower and safety pins, and I hadn't showered in, well, let's just say I was intimately familiar with the concept of dry shampoo, but none of that mattered. I was so close. The border crossing was a blur of official-looking buildings, stern-faced guards, and the overwhelming urge to burst into a spontaneous rendition of Eye of the Tiger. As I stumbled across the finish line, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. I'd faced my fears, conquered my stomach's questionable cravings, and emerged victorious, if slightly worse for wear. Sure, I hadn't exactly done it in style. My journey had been fraught with challenges, fueled by questionable food choices and punctuated by moments of sheer absurdity. But that, I realized, was the beauty of it all. I'd learned that sometimes the most memorable adventures are the ones that don't go according to plan. I'd learned that kindness can be found in the most unexpected places, from a heavy metal-loving granny to a group of scooter-savvy teenagers. And most importantly, I'd learned that you don't need a lot of money to have an incredible adventure. Looking back, I wouldn't trade my culinary journey for all the Michelin stars in the world. I discovered a newfound appreciation for the simple things: a perfectly ripe banana, a warm cup of gas station coffee, a meal that didn't require a hazmat suit to digest. I'd learned that food at its core isn't just about sustenance, it's about connection. So would I recommend crossing a country with practically no money? Maybe. Maybe not. It's an experience I wouldn't trade for the world, but it's not for the faint of heart or stomach. But if you're looking for an adventure, a chance to test your limits, and a crash course in the art of budget travel and budget hygiene, then by all means, grab your backpack, your sense of humor, and maybe a few extra dollars just in case. The open road awaits. Just maybe pack a few extra granola bars, and for the love of all that is holy, avoid the karaoke taxis. I stumbled back into my own world a changed man. Okay, maybe not changed. My family still recognized me, which was a good sign. My reflection in the mirror, however, was a different story. I looked like I'd been dragged backward through a hedge maze, fueled by nothing but questionable gas station snacks and sheer willpower. But beneath the grime, the fatigue, and the lingering scent of Ethel's air freshener, there was something different. A newfound confidence, perhaps. Or maybe just a deep appreciation for the simple luxury of a hot shower and a meal that didn't require bartering. I'd proven something to myself. Something about resilience, resourcefulness, and the power of a good story to make people laugh, or at least politely avert their eyes. So, was it genius or madness, this harebrained scheme to traverse a country on a shoestring budget? Honestly, a bit of both. There were moments of brilliance, flashes of ingenuity that would make even a seasoned backpacker nod in approval. And then there were moments where I questioned my sanity, my hygiene, and my decision to trust a stranger who offered me a ride in a van that smelled suspiciously like a petting zoo. But that's the thing about adventures, isn't it? They're messy, unpredictable, and rarely go according to plan. And the best ones, the ones that stay with you long after the tan lines have faded and the souvenirs have gathered dust, are the ones that teach you something about yourself. I learned that discomfort can be a powerful teacher, that sometimes the greatest luxury is the absence of luxury, that a good story, a shared laugh, a moment of human connection can be more valuable than any material possession. I learned that the world is full of kind, generous, slightly eccentric people who are willing to help a stranger in need, even if that stranger smells faintly of desperation and questionable life choices. And most importantly, I learned that you don't need a lot of money to live a rich, fulfilling life. You just need an open mind, a willingness to embrace the unknown, and maybe a really good playlist to get you through the tough times. So would I do it again? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, who am I kidding? I'm already planning my next adventure, but this time I'm making a few minor adjustments. For starters, I'm packing more snacks, and maybe a bar of soap. And I'm definitely investing in some noise-canceling headphones, because as much as I love heavy metal polka, a little peace and quiet never hurt anyone. The open road awaits, and this time I'll be ready for it. Well, almost ready. Because let's be real, half the fun of an adventure is the anticipation of the unknown.